Welcome to the Shelter FootyCast live from the underground bunker studios at BackChat Studios. I'm Simon Beaumont, or I'm Simon Beaumont's dad, and Mark Reddings is here with us today as well. Hello Skeet.
Hello, Bowie. Good to have you in the hot seat. And, of course, our esteemed leader, Will Schofield, has gone to Europe. And, look, I'm not sure whether it's going to be the greatest scoop of all time, catching up with Daniel Ricciardo at the moment, or it's going to get donuts because he's down in the dumps. But either way, it's an interesting time to be over there covering Formula One.
Yeah, it's an amazing bit of work by Scully to get himself over for this. I'll always be in great admiration of the way he's able to scam these things. We should mention the Southern River Band too. I saw one of the greatest days of my life, Skeet.
Yep.
Ravenswood Hotel, Australia Day, Southern River Band. Great day.
That's one of the greatest days of your life.
Yes. And I've got 4 kids, and it probably comes in about number 2, I reckon.
And you're a music man, so that's good. That you're profoundly music orientated, and you pretend that you're a musician yourself at times. So yeah, it's good.
I do. I do pretend. Get along and see the Southern River Band, Cal and the fellas from Thornley. They're amazing. The format, if you haven't heard it before or haven't seen it before, every Monday and Thursday, a preview of what's to come or a review of what's been on that round. And we find ourselves, Skeet, in between in finals week where we have a bit of a lull, but plenty of celebrations and awards on in this period of time.
Absolutely. And by the way, if you'd like to get involved with the FootyCast socials at Shelter FootyCast, we've got FootyCast at shelterbrewing.com.au, YouTube, BackChat, Shelter FootyCast playlist. Born and bred in Busselton. I'm not great on social media, as you may know. So that's where I leave Scully to do all that stuff. But yeah, we always like the interaction. So you're right. Plenty of footy, but no footy, if you get my drift.
Yeah, I sure do. And Shelter, drink it every day of your life.
Good drop.
Yeah, it is.
It's a massive drop, and the boys do a great job, and we are absolutely proud to be associated with them.
Yeah, so big moment of the in this in between this little lull. Do you like the bye week? I don't mind it, but
Why?
It gives me a chance to sort of take a breath, reflect, see my family, do the weeding, mow the lawn, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, see, that's
you don't like it.
That's exactly what I want to do. I don't want to have to be asked by my wife to do stuff around the house that I'm not good at. So. I'm a bit of the mind that I reckon you have a bye. I didn't mind it before the grand final last year in Perth. Now, I know that was COVID related to some degree, but I think if you're going to give teams a rest, give the 2 best teams of the year who've qualified, and particularly, for instance, if there's a bout of concussion, that player can get up, or if there's an injury. I'm more inclined to putting it before the grand final as opposed to now, because it allows teams like the Bulldogs who've scraped in when they've just made the finals to get the luxury of having a week's break. So, no, I don't mind the bye, but not now.
And we should never forget why it came about, the Ross Lyon bye. We all remember those days, the tanking and the issues with trying to go into, with your best team into a final series, but also it's there for a reason. I don't mind it. I know that a lot of players don't like it. I don't think Scully really likes it. I heard Luke Ryan say he doesn't really like it. So, but it might work in Freo's favour, right? Because,
at the moment.
Yeah, because of Fife. Yeah.
Because it's not just Fife, but Taberner, with Lobb, with Griffin Logue. It's probably opportunistic for them. But in terms of, I think footballers are like people in terms of work. They're better in a groove and momentum. And Scully, I think, sums up a lot of players' thoughts that you'd rather be playing than doing match sim.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know when it comes to my working life. I do like to have a holiday. I don't get much momentum. I don't get much of a head of steam up, Skeet. It was the big moment of the round, wasn't it? Cam Rayner from the Brisbane Lions has been in ripping form, and he misses the start of the finals.
Yeah, it was that tackle and that sling tackle which has become very much. I actually feel sorry for those laying tackles now, because you have to. The idea is to pin the arms, because players are so adept at getting hand pass away. So pin the arms, but not allow the player to go to ground and potentially, in the case of Ben Brown, hit his head on the cricket pitch area at the Gabba, which resulted in a bit of blood, head injury, and Cam Rayner misses week 1 of the finals. So that's a big call, no doubt. But look, the Lions are just staggering into the final, so they could ill afford to lose him, but they have. And that's not the only issue with Brisbane this last week or so.
No, that's right. And I listened to a little bit of Melbourne footy radio yesterday, Skeet, and there's more to come in the Dane Zorko abuse of player Petty from Melbourne. In tears at the 3/4 time break, as people would have seen. But now some information is starting to come out about what was said to Dane Zorko in the first place. So we know he was He was unhappy and fired up, wasn't he, Dane Zorko, the Brisbane skipper?
Yeah, look, there's talk that it might have been he who was the subject of some sledging with regards to female family members. So, look, the AFL's been really strange with this one, because normally if it's a racial, if it's a religious vilification, this is really put on the front page with regards to the AFL handing out fines, sanctions. Hasn't been the case with the AFL. They've been pretty happy to see it just pushed to one side.
Quickly, and worked on it quickly.
So you're right. There's the Zorko side of the discussion we need to hear, because that doesn't give him an excuse or an out, but it certainly might give some clarification as to why he went down that path.
5-time best and fairest, I think he is, at his own club, Zorko. He's the skipper and the leader. And I guess part of all of this is he probably needs to do better in heated situations. And Brizzy themselves and Chris Fagan themselves go into a final series after a couple of stutters. And I wonder if that is leadership, Skeet.
Yeah, look, you'd have to question whether he's the man to take them forward. He's obviously, as you said, been there for a little while. If Brisbane doesn't get past the first week of the finals, maybe they need to reset on that front anyway. So, look, Chris Fagan, I think, is a pretty good operator as a coach. He's a father figure. So I think they'll address it internally well. But Dane Zorko, I think this is the second time from memory that he's had some verbals with an opposition player. I think it might have been Brett Harvey towards the final siren going back many years ago. So, but put it into context, if he has received something pretty personal prior to that, then maybe that's the reason why he went down that area.
Any footy coach that still uses a clipboard, like Fagan does, he's a good old
You
school
like
coach.
that?
I do like that. See the Bombers fly up, Skeet. Another week of woes for the Dons. What on earth is going on there? So people leaving board. The way the Ben Rutten coaching issue was handled.
Yeah, well, I think once David Barham intervened and Paul Brasher had to step aside as chairman, he had to do this as a new chairman. He had to basically get rid of board members. Simon Madden, who's been on there for a while. We know that Sean Mellman's going to wind up, their head of finance. There's a range of people that and contributors that are going to step down in the short term. The question mark, what does Sheeds do? He's still on the board. He's obviously a bit controversial. He's in town at the moment, so he's look, everyone loves Sheeds, but whether he's a board member that should hold as much weight as he does is a question. But yeah, they've got the biggest call is who they're going to get for coach. And at this stage, they're saying they want an experienced coach, which narrows the field down significantly, those that are available and those that would fit the Essendon mould. I
heard you and Scully talking about this last week. And is it will an assistant coach be regarded as having coaching experience? And if they're after an Essendon person, well then Sheedy and Hurd's names get mentioned. But I guess Dean Solomon's probably in the mix as well, isn't he?
You have to be, wouldn't he? Yeah. Look, and James Hurd, that is the extraordinary name that's come out of this. Is there is a push, a strong push from those within the Essendon inner circle for him to return as a coach. I think that's extraordinary, but I don't say he shouldn't get another chance, but I don't think Essendon is the place he should go back to. He's been at the Giants helping out Mark McVeigh. I think Dean Solomon, he again doesn't have senior experience, but he's been in the system for a long time, a bit like Adam Kingsley, who has been appointed this week to the Giants. So the Bombers, what they do give us, they give us some the popcorn, and we can sit back and watch them disintegrate over the next couple of weeks, and hopefully, I mean, from their point of view, just find a coach that gives them some momentum heading into the pre-season.
A little memory and a stat for you, Skeet. Despite the peptide saga and all that went wrong with Essendon during the James Hurd stewardship, he's always been the hologram in the MCG Football Museum. He's just stayed there. Despite his fall from grace, he's always been the hologram. There's a Warney hologram and a James Hurd hologram. So I guess the footy community still regards him in a football sense as a former gun player and a half-decent coach, no matter what happened. Let's talk West Coast and Fremantle, shall we?
We shall. Mind you, that's the most articulate anyone sat in that seat for the last 3 months has actually sounded. So it's just a nice contrast to Scully's bumbling and fumbling and coughing and burping and the rest of it.
And wearing a jacket as well, Scully, if you're... and I won't... I'll keep the profanities to a minimum because I know Mrs. Schofield will be watching all of this today.
Not likely.
West Coast and Freo, let's go to Freo. On the back of the terrific news that Andy Brayshaw has won the MVP and is an All-Australian selection as well. Freo's best finish for a number of years, Skeet.
Has been, and they get to play the finals for the first time since 2015. There's a sense of disappointment, wasn't there, when they didn't get the top 4 finish. That was obviously out of their hands to a degree because of Collingwood's win, because of Sydney's win, but I think they can give the first part of the finals a bit of a shake-up, and they've got the Western Bulldogs first up. Going back to Andy Brayshaw, isn't that I don't think there's anyone in footy that doesn't like a Brayshaw. They're just a very popular family in footy, and Andy's great. Hamish, who plays some footy over here, I know you're dealing with East Perth, you would have come across him. Really good fella. So, but for Andrew Brayshaw, Justin Lomia put an interesting tweet last night just on social media saying, you reap what you sow. And that's exactly what it has been for Andrew Brayshaw. So he's on the bench for the All-Australian squad, which shows you just how good the depth is there. But yeah, he'll go into the final series with a fair bit of confidence. What was their best win of the year? Was it Melbourne at the MCG to break their winning streak? Or was it beating the Cats down in Geelong, which we know how hard it is to win? They're the two standout games, and they've been very good on the road.
Hard to separate, but I think the Melbourne game, and given the venue that it was at, which one do you prefer?
Yeah, probably go the Demons. I thought the Geelong victory was terrific. The Cats probably hadn't hit their peak at that point. So, but to bring Melbourne, and everyone at that stage was saying, well, they might go through the season undefeated. Well, what they have done is Melbourne has just had that little dip during the middle back half of the year, and you can see the timing of it, their form back to what they were at the start of the season, outstanding. So well done to Brayshaw. Cox, of course, Brendan Cox in the 44-man squad. So 4 selections in the 22 under 22 with Brayshaw, Young, Clark, Sarong, all outstanding. And as you say, Andy Brayshaw, the youngest player to win the MVP award since Nick Revolt in 2003. And
we should never forget that that's a peer review, so he's voted in by his fellow players, which is an incredible achievement, isn't it? So what is it, 18 clubs, squads of 42 or 44, and they've decided that he's the most valuable player of that very large cohort. So well done to him. Does Nat Fyfe play waffle footy this week?
No.
Mark?
No, he's not.
No.
He's been ruled out of that.
Has he?
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because when he came back from that long-term injury, I think it was 3 months ago now, when he played against Subiaco at Leederville and big crowds were there, it was considered that was important for him to get some footy. Now I think the mindset is give him some match simulation, a heavy training load between now and Saturday week. And given his form it's been interesting. A nearly game against the Giants, I think 9 touches, lots of handballs since he's come back into the AFL, not kicking as much.
Yeah.
But he's, with Carl the other night, and he said he's no certainty to keep his spot on the side. Seriously, he will be playing in that elimination final. You know it, I know it.
Yeah. Dual Brownlow medalist. Your skill doesn't go away. He sometimes does look to me as experienced as he is. He has looked this year that he doesn't quite know where to play. He's not quite sure of his role. And I think he's mentioned that in a few post-match interviews. He occasionally looks a little bit lost, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's a fair call, because I think he's only known being a midfield beast. And now they've got the likes of Brodie and Brayshaw and Mundy and Sarong working through the middle. He probably, for whatever reason, doesn't fit that grouping. And so the obvious position for him to play now is forward. But we know his goal kicking is a little bit iffy. His marking is elite. But, yeah, you're right. He just looks like a bloke that hasn't played a lot of footy for a while. Will
Schofield will always say that role players are important in any premiership, and he'll always talk up his own. He played every single minute of the 18 grand final.
He would have told you that?
Yeah. Oh, I'd saw it, yeah. Every day, every time I see him, he reminds me. Only the 6th West Coast Eagle in history to play all minutes in a final.
How would he come up with that amazing stat? He would have researched that to the end.
I think he researches himself pretty heavily. He's on very good terms with himself, Skeet, as we know. Hello, Scully. How deep can Freo go, Skeet? If they play their best footy, if they are allowed to, or if they turn up, how deep can they go?
Well, bear in mind, if they beat the Bulldogs, they meet the loser of Geelong and Collingwood. I've said this all season, and I know the flag mantle shirts have been tucked away for Scully for some time, but I've always thought if they could win one final, and at home, which they get the chance to do that would be big tick for me. Yep. And obviously if they could do that, go to the MCG and be really competitive against Geelong or Collingwood, I still think that would be an outstanding season for Freo. Mm-hmm. That would be me. Maybe I'm being a bit of a killjoy, but I think that would be realistic.
Yeah, I think so, given where they've come from. And I've mentioned it a few times, Skeet, it's a young management group too.
Yep.
Bell, Garlick, Josh Carr, Jamie Graham, the whole leadership cohort at Freo is a young group, and they are a contemporary group, so they understand the modern game, I think. Let's talk about West Coast. Worst season ever. I think previously when they won the Wooden Spoon, they won 3 games,
yes,
which included a mid-season thrashing by Geelong of 135 points.
I remember that game. Remember that game?
I went to that game.
That was at Subi, wasn't it? I remember commentating the game for 6PR, and Mark Thompson, during the third or fourth quarter, seriously, he started eating a hamburger.
That's right, he did.
Just started thinking, well, this game, and we just laughed. And he was just chewing away. Now, he was a bit different cat, Bomber Thompson, but that showed you how bad West Coast were that year. But this season, yeah, it's been ugly. And you're a West Coast sympathiser. It has been ugly.
Yes, it has been ugly. It's been. I've been listening to it on radio more than watching it because it breaks my heart a little bit. But I guess it's part game plan. We know there was a COVID issue as well in the middle of the season, and I've had COVID, and it takes you a long time, even at my level, before you can get to the end of the pool again. So it does really knock your aerobic capacity around, and I think you could see, when the teams were getting a run on that lot of last quarter goals against West Coast this year. So that's certainly a reason, but there's reasons and excuses. They've got to sort that out now, don't they?
They do. They've got the John Worsfold medal tomorrow night, and Tom Barras might have missed selection in the All-Australian final team in the 44-man squad, but he'll be winning the John Worsfold medal, you would expect. He's had an outstanding season. You think of guys like Tim Kelly, Jack Redden, Shannon Hearn as well, I think will be a top 5 finisher or thereabouts. So I was actually speaking to someone at the club last weekend, and they had to put together the video highlights for tomorrow night. And you're talking about tough years. That's going to be that's a tough job in itself to try and find. Remember the matches against Sydney and Richmond? It was ugly. But off the back of that, we know that the Eagles will send 10, 12, maybe even 14 players back to the Waffle to finish off the season. So they'll be looking at them. They'll have their exit meetings in the next, intermittently, I'd imagine, over the next couple of weeks. They've got a lot to sort out. Will they go for Luke Jackson? Trevor Nisbet has suggested that might be the case. They have got room. They've got an appetite. Is it done and dusted with Fremantle? I'm not sure. They've got some list decisions to make, given that only Josh Kennedy has announced his retirement. So they are going to cull some numbers. On the upside, they've got some young players who are coming through, which I think towards the back end of this year was important to see from an Eagles perspective.
Exit interviews. Do I get an exit interview out of the chair when Scully comes back?
No, you'll
an exit meeting.
No, you're going to be, like a Medi sub. No, the Medi sub. Because what happens with you is when I go away for a break at the end of October, you will then probably slide back in and no, just a Medi sub situation.
Call your jets. So Tom Barras to win the John Worsfold medal, Andy Brayshaw to win the Doig medal. You would think at Fremantle, wouldn't you?
You would think.
Sean Darcy won it last year, didn't he?
Yeah, and look, I think obviously Fremantle's far more competitive with the year they've had. So and the voting systems always also can be quite unique in different clubs and how they judge what a player has done value wise. But the good news for West Coast, just looking ahead briefly, Brady Hoff, Rhett Bazzo, obviously Campbell Chestnut comes back into the mix. Bailey Williams showed a little bit. Callum Jamison, they're guys that I think you can, and obviously Jai Cully, who's the number 1 mid-season draft pick. So there's a bit there. They get a number 2 draft pick. They start to get some of these young guys rolling through. I think, I don't know, maybe I'm a bit parochial. I think they can bounce back quicker than some think.
And it's a change of emphasis and approach by West Coast. They've always mostly finished in finals, haven't used the draft extensively. They've always worked on their own system, try to get local players as much as they can and work their system. This has to be a change this time, doesn't it? Got to go to the draft.
Absolutely, and I think they've committed to that. Bear in mind, Oscar Allen, if he comes back, there's a lot of ifs. If these players come back, Elliot Yeo, Dom Shee, Jay McGovern, if they all come back healthy, it's a reasonably decent core group of players. So they're the big question mark for next year. But as for now, I think they just want to have a couple of beers, a couple of shelters, chill the jets, as they say, cool the jets, and just put this year behind, because ever since the first practice match against the Dockers, where they lost Sheed, they lost Shio, they lost Campbell-Chesser, it's been a disaster.
Yeah, and Oscar Allen and all that too as well. Really miss him this year. Big shoes for him to step into next year in that forward line without Josh Kennedy. Skeet, this is Mark Reddings. I'm Simon Beaumont. I'm filling in for Will Schofield, who's having a European sojourn at the moment. Let's talk All-Australian. What I would say to kick off is it's hard to get in the All-Australian team because the competition itself is so even, Skeet. It's getting harder and harder as teams match each other on the field. It's getting harder and harder to get in the team. And teams won't dominate the All-Australian. So a team that's on the top of the ladder like Geelong won't necessarily get 5 or 6 players in anymore, will they?
Difficult, yeah. And look, it's fascinating the way they put the teams down, and sometimes players aren't put in necessarily their position they've played in, but for instance, with the forward line that includes Jeremy Cameron, Charlie Curnow, Tom Hawkins, you just got to fit them in somehow, don't you? So that's always an issue. The Dacos boys was a fascinating discussion. Josh named Nick. Could he have made the 44-man squad? Possibly, but look, there's always an unlucky story with the All-Australian team, the finals. I think Rory Lev was an unlucky story from Adelaide. I thought he had a really good season. But yeah, you look at that team. Tom Stewart missed 6 games of footy. He's in the back pocket.
Yep.
So you can put arguments to say, well, as good as he is, did he play enough footy? Braden Maynard on the other side of Stephen May, no argument there. Jack Sinclair had a great year. Sam Taylor, of course, Swan District's boy, and Adam Sard from Carlton were really good. Took Miller, who, of course, tied with Clayton Oliver for the MVP. They're side by side. Callum Mills had a terrific season. And what about this setup of Cripps, Lockie Neal, and Max Gawn as your first ruck? Of course, Gawn leading that.
Yeah, so good, isn't it? And just very quickly back on the Dacos name, the Rising Star Award as well. And the Dacos boys have had a say in Collingwood's fortunes this year, haven't they? So, and great to see the great Peter Dacos, the Macedonian marvel, in the room last night with his boy, and obviously very, very proud. But wouldn't it be good, Skeet, to choose an Australia A? So the second All-Australian team, and they play each other at some point. But
a bit like cricket, when they did that with the cricket. And, of course, everyone goes for the Australia A team, which didn't work all that well. But once we play China or New Zealand, or this will be a really good side. I don't think we'll be getting beaten on that basis. One thing I did notice, I think we mentioned deconing before, is that Sam and Tom, I was in doing some radio work last night, but I did catch the work of the mother. Yes. Of the deconing boys.
Stand out.
And so she was asked about when, Carlton played Geelong, and of course her 2 boys in action. She goes, well, they asked, how did you cope with that? She said, well, I was in a bar in Bali getting smashed, essentially, getting drunk. So she said she had a ball watching the 2 boys. She was a character.
She was, and I think she'd need to be a character. I think he's one of 10, isn't he? Is
that right?
I think there's a heap of them. Yeah, so I think she's been busy. I think
good Catholic girl, maybe.
Yeah, I will stand corrected on that. And as
10,
as Scully would know,
have you
research
right?
is my thing. Hey,
10. Is that you've heard? They've got 10
kids. Said last night. Yeah, in the interview he said you got 9 sibs. So whether it's a blended family or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that could be the case. That's a big effort in the modern society. But that's a lot of... you're right,
big effort in the modern society. In any society.
I wonder how many girls and boys in that mix. Didn't find that out. But
no, I didn't find that
out. Might be a couple of marriages involved there, Bo. Yeah. You might be au fait with that.
And sometimes that does happen. Been married once, Ski.
Once, sorry.
Just on All-Australian, Tommy... And again, to go to the back line. So Braden Maynard has made a late run, hasn't he? The Collingwood backman, and he's been pretty good as their fortunes have improved, especially that run with all the wins that they got on. Is Tommy Barrass a little unlucky to miss out? He was in the squad.
Possibly unlucky, but when I suppose the factor which would have hurt him, and obviously the teams up the top with their defensive work get rewarded for that, and the Eagles leak goals, and even though he was good, I think that may have it was always going to be tough for the Eagles given the season they had to get a player in. So Tommy, terrific season. I don't think he'll take it with a grain of salt and move forward. But yeah, I suppose if anything, Fremantle could be a little bit miffed that they've got one of the best defensive units in the competition.
Yep.
And where's their All-Australian defender? None.
Yep.
So Oh, look, Jacko and Glenn Jakovic and those guys on the judging panel, it's a thankless role because every time you put a team up, there's going to be idiots like you and me who want to pick it to pieces.
Yeah, you're going to talk about it afterwards for sure. So Tommy Barras, just on him, if he does do really well in the Worsfold medal, and we hope he does, big year for Tom with the passing of his father, who you and I both knew and loved, and the birth of his first baby, first kid. That's a really big 12 months for Tom and the family.
Yeah, he's a well-spoken young man. I wouldn't be surprised over the summer whether he takes over the captaincy. That's probably the next logical step. Luke Shuey, terrific bloke, great family guy himself. And just wonder whether Luke, given his lack of ability to have continuity in his footy, whether, Tommy, this is your turn for the transition. So that will play out over summer, and I think Tom would make a terrific captain. Yeah,
I think Tom got into medicine. I think, didn't he, or was on an academic pathway? Did you know Will Schofield has done half a law degree?
Oh yeah, you told me that the other day.
Half a law degree.
Completely staggered me. Just given our conversations and just watching him act in general.
Just being around him.
You would never pick him. It's not like that. That brainiac that you think, he looks like a bit of a dodo, but he's actually quite smart.
A shambolic, homeless person, but there he is. He finished school and he went to uni a little bit. Is it a portent of things to come where Brayshaw wins the MVP going into the Brownlow? So it's the All-Australian Selection Committee are people like Glenn Jakovic and people in the industry. The Brownlow is voted on by the umpires, and we don't always know what umpires are thinking, do we, Mark?
No, we don't. We know it's a midfielder's medal, so that's a given. So put it this way, it's not going to do his chance, even though the voting has obviously finished for the Brownlow, but whether that matches up with his peers and those who've watched him at close range. Look, we think it's going to be someone like an Oliver. I mean, Tuke Miller, of course, in that mix as well, given what he did last night. I can't see, to be honest with you, what the Brownlow for me is going to be fascinating to see when Josh Kennedy, for instance, kicked 8 goals in his last game. Does he get 3 Brownlow votes? Because big forwards, Tommy Lynch did it quite often in the back end of the season. Of course, Charlie Curnow won the Coleman medal. But do they get Brownlow votes? Probably not.
They don't anymore, do they?
It is
a midfielder's medal, and Scully will attest to that, given the complete lack of Brownlow votes he won in the latter stages of his career. But I wonder if so he went into favouritism. Andy Brayshaw went into favouritism with the Brownlow probably about a month ago, and then he dropped out again. This might be a fan's myth or a commentator's myth. Do the players that chat the umpires and BackChat and are a bit mouthy on the field attract the ire of umpires and thereby not get Brownlow votes? Because Lachie Neale is proven that the umpires must like him if he's won a Brownlow, you would have thought. They're obviously not like now. So previous winners obviously don't chat the umpires. I wonder about Clayton Oliver in that regard because he is a gun and he has a massive impact, but Petrarca will take a few votes off him, you would have thought, maybe Maxi as well. But do mouthy players still get Brownlow votes?
Yeah, good question. Look, Lachie Neale, I think it just proves the umpires like that sort of boy band look, like One Direction. That Lachie looks like he's a Harry Styles type. He's got that sort of look about him, and he's such a butter wouldn't melt in my mouth type bloke. So, Greg Williams won a Brownlow, and he obviously wasn't on the best terms with the other umpires either. So, that's an interesting question. I'm just trying to think back. Yeah, generally the players that just get on with it, and I asked Scully this question before with not just sledging, which we've just talked about previously, but also talking to umpires. He said, we don't have enough. The game is so quick nowadays.
Don't have enough time
to get your mouth guard out, to go through the whole, unless the game has stopped. And now the descent, it is almost impossible to give the good old fashioned spray. So, but it's a good point. I think players that just get on with the game, generally, you can't help it as an umpire. I think Beaumont been quiet all day, done his job, got plenty of the footy. We'll give him 3 votes.
We'll talk about this next week as the Brownlow comes into focus. So we're a long way out now. But if you were a gambling man, Mark, 3-2, which you are, 3-2-1 in the Brownlow, just as a speculator.
Next week?
Yeah, for next week in the Brownlow. Who goes 3, 2 and 1? Who goes third, second and first?
Okay, next week.
Yeah, next week.
I'll have a think of it. Yeah, but it's I mean, midfielders just pick your poison, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's the question. But it'd be nice to see a change up, but it's unlikely.
Yeah, that's too right. Some coaching changes, of course, which have come through in the last few days. It's been talked about in Melbourne as the coming home, the great coming home of Al Clarko back to the shin boners.
It has been, and look, there's a great buzz around, and there's now players like Bradley Hill talked about he might join his 4th AFL club. Even here, Blake Acres potentially wanting to go and join Clarko. So there's going to be that destination club feel about North suddenly when you look at this, how they play. Their last outing, their final outing of the season, they were smashed by 67 points by the Gold Coast Suns. So I think it's really interesting because as good a coach as Clarko is, I still have my grave doubts that he's going to be able to, in the first 2 or 3 years, get them firing. I mean, you can only make do with what you've got on your list. And they've got some decent young players, but, gee, they're a long way off the pace.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing he'll try to get back is that famed shin boner spirit, isn't it? Play with intent, play with strength. He's a tough nut. He brings...
Respect.
And Clarko teams bring their A game most weeks, don't they?
They do. That being said, back into the Hawthorn time, he was, with a club and with a list that was losing experienced players, and they were getting touched up regularly as well. So look, that's the watch over the summer, Clarks, and now of course the Giants have picked up Adam Kingsley, who had a really good assistant coach. Been around the talk of having a senior job for the best part of a decade, but Richmond was where he did his best work. So congratulations to him. He's got an interesting job at the Giants because they've got some real talent there, but they might be losing Hopper, they might be losing Taranto, they might be. The salary cap always seems to be an issue, and players are always feeling, if they're Victorian-based, always looking to get home, it seems. So hopefully he can get the job done. And of course the Bombers, as we talked about, is the big question mark heading into the postseason. Or maybe they'll get it done before grand final day. Can
you believe that GWS played in a grand final just 2 years ago? That seems a long, long time ago, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah, and they got absolutely smacked. They played their grand final the week before against Collingwood. Yeah, they got belted. So, look, to be fair, we knocked the Giants, but two clubs that, I guess, parallels you can draw, the Gold Coast Suns and the Giants. The Giants have played finals footy, a bit of it.
Yep.
And the Gold Coast Suns, with Isaac Rankin deciding to request a trade to Adelaide, means they, again, are in a spot of bother. So, the Giants have done pretty well considering where they are. I know they had a lot of financial benefits, but just compared to the Gold Coast Suns, they're bounds ahead.
Let's look at the AFLW season, Skeet. A number of new teams coming in. It's now an 18-club season, so the Hawks come in, the Bombers, Swans and Port. The AFL put a lot of resources and a lot of money into AFLW, and I, as the manager of 3 girls in my, I've got 3 daughters, and I want them and their mates to have an opportunity to play women's footy and to love women's footy like as much as you and I do. But the AFL resource this really heavily, don't they?
They do, and they've had to, because they're starting from a so low base. I mean, in 10, 15 years, as you say, there'll be girls that have grown up playing footy from 5 or 6 years of age, but that hasn't always been the case, as we know. Primarily because the opportunities weren't there. So, look, it is hard when you watch a game of AFL footy and then AFLW because of the background of what guys have had compared to some of the women. And so you just have to show patience with this. And I think we're going to need that with 18 teams because the standard cannot simply go up with an extra group of teams in there.
No, that's right.
So that's going to make it difficult. But look, what they've done with the scheduling of the season, I think, is really smart. Of course, this weekend it kicks off. The Dockers head up to Brisbane to take on the Lions, which is always a tough task. And it all begins tonight. Collingwood Carlton, I think it is. Yeah. So isn't that funny? 2 teams that went toe to toe at the MCG, and the feelings between those 2 clubs. So they get it started. Adelaide and Melbourne with an early season grand final rematch is terrific. And Essendon and Hawthorn, the popularity of those 2 clubs means that game's had to be shifted to Marvel Stadium. So on that basis, there's exciting times ahead. The standard is always going to be questioned until more professionalism comes in. Of course, they're getting paid more money, which is great. But yeah, there's definite signs of improvement there. I think the AFL needs to get credit for persevering and pushing. Now it's up to the clubs to develop this talent and try and source the talent, and hopefully we get a really competitive AFLW season. And from a West Coast point of view, a couple of victories would be nice.
Yeah, it would be. Between the men's team, the women's team and the reserves.
Waffle.
It's been a very, very long 12 months. The Waffle team as well, yeah. Season number 7 for AFLW. I'm with you. Stick with it. The professionalism and the athleticism will improve. If you look at women's cricket versus men's cricket at the elite end, we've got the best women's cricket team in the world. We've got the best women's competition in the world in the WBBL. It can happen. And, you don't have to look at Meg Lanning and the calibre of the Australian, Alyssa Healy, Elise Perry. It will happen. The disparity will be reduced.
One thing I do notice when I go and either call or watch AFLW, they're lunatics. They tackle as ferociously, as frantically, and they hit hard, and sometimes to the detriment of their own bodies, because they just, you think, no, footy smarts here. No, they'll just go at the man or go at the woman, should I say, and it'll be carnage because they are so fearless.
Yep. Yeah, get onto it.
Unlike us.
It all starts tonight. Waffle coaching, a little bit of movement this week. Jeremy Barnard from my beloved Royals, who is regarded, through the three-peat back in the day, Ski, around the early 2000s, those great East Perth teams, and he was brought back into the club to engender that feeling and that spirit again. Ripper bloke. Good coach, but it hasn't worked out. And I've heard Dean Turner talk about this on radio during the week, that it just didn't work for whatever reason. Jeremy Barnard and the Royals part ways.
They do. Currently sitting in 7th position. They've had some good wins this year, including a victory over Claremont, but no finals in his 4 seasons. And Barney, I mean, let's be honest, their list wasn't great, and it didn't help when Seb Queck got taken by the Dockers in the mid-season draft. So, look, no huge surprise there. Dean Turner said to us on radio last night that it was probably one of the hardest decisions he's had to make, but given Jeremy's great contribution to East Perth, so hopefully there's a role for Barney in footy somewhere. Ross McQueen, who's a very established junior coach, gets the opportunity for 2 games. So 6 wins, 10 losses for them. And then I'm commentating Perth versus the Eagles, my team, the Demons, on the weekend. And Gary Moss gets a victory over the Eagles. And then the same day, he finds out that he's going to have to reapply for the job at the end of the season.
One of the all-time great footy blokes, Gary Moss.
Yeah.
Played at Hawthorn. I think 8 games for Hawthorn.
But not one of the great all-time footy calls, because why make a guy, why ask him if he wants to apply again for a job? Just sack him.
Yeah.
Just sack him. I mean, I'm a Perth man. But to me, move on. Don't say, well, you can apply again. It's a bit like the Justin Langer, have 6 months and then we'll... I mean, that to me, East Perth did
So as a Perth supporter, you're feeling a bit unhappy, a bit of a bad taste in your mouth over it?
A little bit, just that element. Look, I understand you need results, and no one knows that more than us since 1977, no flag. And the waffle competition needs a strong Perth team. I know that sounds a bit insular, but I think the competition is better if East Perth, well followed, and Perth with a big latent group of supporters can find a way to get success. Stevie Armstrong, speaking of the Perth DNA, he gets a chance for the next couple of games to be coached, but guys like Peter Sumich, Peter German, all being thrown up as possibilities to come back and coach. And we know that Barra is, in all seriousness, is most likely going to be the next president. So
is that right?
He's got a huge task on his hand if he does step into that position. Bronte has done it for a long time at East Perth with, and what Barra probably doesn't know is how much work and how much stuff involved with being the president. It's a thankless role, and even harder at a club that is not having success.
Great football person, Barra, no doubt about it. But what the good presidents do is they bring in money into the club. They bring in sponsors, and that's their network, isn't it? And that's what Bronte Housen has always done at East Freo. Great can bar at... Great can bar full of shelters.
At Lathlane?
Lathlane, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
freezing cold.
I think you call it a pig bar or something. But mate, and you talk about...
pig bar.
Well, it's feral, and I loved it when I've had the chance to go there. And you tend to give some advice to the umpires, the players. It's just, and you're just sitting there, you have 5 or 6, and before you know it, you're walking around like Wayne Carey, but you're just a stupid old football supporter. But and of course,
I'm really glad I brought this up.
We don't advocate sledging players or umpires because stop umpire abuse,
and drink responsibly.
But it's a bit of that tribal nature which we love with footy. So East Perth and Perth, both are going to finish outside the finals, both looking for new coaches. So end of the day, we need to hopefully get a good final series at Leederville Oval, grand final. Bring it on.
A couple of debate questions for you and I to have a look at some of the issues floating around in footy at the moment. Geelong Collingwood should have been played down on the windswept banks of Corio Bay down at Scoey's old patch, Geelong.
Is this the pardon the interruption part of the shelter FootyCast? I don't know how we're going to blow on this one, but really, I mean, Geelong Collingwood has to be at the G. I mean, irrespective of, you say that Geelong have got the home ground advantage earned by finishing top. Is that you trying to put that as an argument?
Look, I reckon when it happened last time, when Freo were forced to go down there, and Andrew and Freo won, you'll remember the year better than me, and that was an Andrew Demetrio call, one of the worst calls ever made, and I'm
was fully... Was that Basel, or was it by the AFL you been?
By the AFL.
No, I'm joking. Basel.
But No, play it at the G. Play at the G every day of the week, Skeet.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you...
But people are asking it, aren't they, in the footy world?
Fremantle had 7 supporters back in 2013 go down to Geelong, whereas, mate, it's going to be 95,000. I mean, if it can match what we saw with Carlton and Collingwood, which it probably will for that qualifying final, it's a Saturday afternoon. Yeah, I don't think we're blowing too much on this one. I think the MCG Geelong Collingwood qualifying final is done.
So let's see where you and I sit if we're on opposing sides of this. Essendon's brand over the last month has been tarnished and has been tainted. Their issues with the way handled Ben Rutten and the possible inclusion of Alistair Clarkson into their coaching mix. Their board walking left, right and centre. Great footy names like Madden walking off the board. I reckon they need intervention from the AFL. They can't do this on their own because if they're a massive club with a huge membership support, they need the AFL to hold their hand a bit at the moment.
No, well, I tend to disagree with you here, Bo, because if Carlton, which was going through a similar situation last year, remember David Teague and going through, it was embarrassing the way he was paraded before the media, and it was just embarrassing how he departed the club. Brian Cook came in. They may have had behind the scenes some cajoling from the AFL, but by and large, they're big boys. They made their own bet, Essendon, and they need to, they're a big, powerful club. Intervention? No, don't think so. I mean, North Melbourne, priority pick, perhaps. Essendon? No, I think they've got enough resources to get this right, enough good footy people at the club that I'm sure the AFL will be keeping a close eye on how they go about things, but no, they'll be...
But how are they going, Skeet? They've come out of the peptides saga, which was a debacle. One of their blokes loses his Brownlow.
Yep.
They then stagger through this weird succession thing with Worsfold and Rutten, and they're still no better off. Surely Gill can just ring a couple of them and say, "Would you let's at least have a cup of coffee on this."
And do what? I mean, in all seriousness, what do they change? They've already got the change of chairman. They've got board members. They'll probably shrink that board because I think it's, by all accounts, too large. The coterie groups at the Bombers apparently very much involved in areas outside their domain. The footy department, there's been issues with Josh Marnie and staff members there. So... I'm not sure that...
I guess my point is, in terms of some philosophical help or guidance, whatever Essendon have been doing in the last 10 years hasn't been working on the field or off the field.
Okay, no, well, that may happen, but I would suggest that the AFL will keep its distance on that one, but have a look, and the Bombers, they're big boys, put your big boy pants on and make the decisions.
All right. Now, how does Andy Brayshaw win an MVP as voted by his peers, but he gets named on the bench, Skeet? Why isn't he at the first bounce in the middle?
Okay, well, if we have a look at the All-Australian team, I think I mentioned Cripps and Lachie Neale. Does he go ahead of those two mids underneath Maxi Gawn? All I'm saying is there's so many quality mids in the AFL that despite what is most valuable player doesn't mean you're the best player in that sense. Mm-hmm. You tend to you think that if he's most valuable player, he should be in the starting side for All Australian?
Well, I guess it's part of the All-Australian selection process. So who goes out? Does Cripps go onto the bench or does Lachie Neale go onto the bench? But I guess it's the controversy of All-Australian has always been about fitting those players. So I think Nick Natanui's been on the bench previously, hasn't he, and other players like that. So if you were serious about it and it was the first bounce and you were playing China, I would. If he wasn't on the bench, I'd have him on the ground in the first 3 minutes. Andy Brayshaw.
Speaking of China, seriously, I commentated gymnastics at the 2012 London Olympics, and I did trampolining, with Liz Chetkovich. And do you know who won the gold medal that day? And I was his name was Dong Dong, and it was Dong Dong.
Can you check research team? Could you please check that?
Dong Dong.
Fact check.
Wins gold. I said it was like. So anyway, China. Good luck to them if they end up playing this team, because they'll get absolutely spifflicated by Maxi Gorn and co.
We talked about Andy Brayshaw's chances in the Brownlow. And again, we'll talk about this next week. But this notion of being the most valuable player in the All-Australian team, I guess we'll always argue about it, and it's still pretty good fun. Most of the All-Australian selections were right, weren't they?
I think so. I mean, there's arguments for everyone. I thought Rory Laird, a bit unlucky, but again, you still have to find someone to displace. Tom Stewart missed a bunch of games because of suspension. Could that have been a little cross against his name? Clearly, the judges thought not. You know what? What it does is it fills up the space this week of discussions with all Australians, with most valuable players, with the coaching setup, which obviously isn't part of the schedule, but certainly fits in with filling media centimetres at the moment.
Clear air for the AFLW start as well.
Yeah, which is
that's
good.
important.
It is important, no doubt about that. Yeah. So I think the AFL, despite my reluctance in having a bye this weekend, this is the way they're doing it. They're going to roll out with the Coleman medal, and there'll be a couple others between now and when we finally get our teeth into next week's footy.
Can't believe you brought up that Dong Dong thing.
Well, it's true. No, I'm not having a go at the Chinese in any way, because they were outstanding gymnasts, and and Liz Chetkovich was terrific to work with. But
works at the Wacker these days.
Does indeed. Yeah. And trampolining,
quality person.
Underestimated sport. You should try it one day.
I will. Just what I need, a new sport at my time of life. Thanks to Liquor Barons. We've got something new this week on the Shelter FootyCast from the underground bunker under the West Australian desert. With the Liquor Barons question of the week, let's take a listen to Luke, who spoke with our friend, our mate, Will Schofield, earlier in the week.
It's time for the Liquor Barons question of the week. That's right, here on the Shelter FootyCast today, we've got Luke from Wembley Downs Liquor Barons, where they always look after the locals and the best place to get your Shelter beer. G'day, Luke. First things first, mate. Which Shelter beer is your favourite at the moment?
Mate, it's got to be the Summer Sour.
Okay.
Mid-strength, so you can drink more of it, and it's pretty crushable.
Yeah, it's mid-strength and you can drink more. I know Dan, our producer here, he loves doing the sours. Very good. Now, let's get to the question of the week. What have you got for me for the Liquor Barons question of the week, Luke?
Mate, I want to take you to take off your West Coast hat for just a second.
Okay.
Do you think the block on Maynard was a free kick?
So are you suggesting that there was a block on Braden Maynard in the 2018 Grand Final? Is that what you're saying, Luke?
I'd have to be suggesting it because it wasn't paid.
Okay, I'll run you through this very quickly. So this is the moment, right? This is the McGovern to Vardy to Ryan to Sheed. Everyone knows it. But the Sheed part of the moment, look, I don't even need to take my West Coast hat on for this. I need to keep it on. Dom Sheed was blocked by Willie Rioli. He blocked Braden Maynard. The umpire didn't pay that. He then played on, didn't call that. And Dom Sheed's never kicked a goal like that in his life. He may have had his eyes closed, and he sunk the Collingwood Magpies. I'm sorry, Luke. Sorry, mate.
Yeah. So was I, mate. I had a same game multi riding on that. He cost me. Funnily enough, he popped in the store the other day, and I was this close to saying I forgive you.
But you still don't, do you? You boys are a chance this year, though, Collingwood.
Oh, mate, we're falling over the line, but I'll take it. It's a good ride.
Very good, mate. Thanks for chatting to us. That's Luke from Wembley Downs Liquor Barons, mate. Good luck in finals. Go the Pies.
Yeah, good on you, Scully. Yeah. Nice work. Yes.
Independent liquor stores, Liquor Barons.
Yeah,
and my local Liquor Barons, which is in Duncraig, liquor store of the year last year.
Really? Outstanding.
Hello to the fellas. I might pop in there every now and then, Mark.
Just
grab myself a couple of shelters.
Wet the whistle. Thanks to Scully as well, who that was recorded in a Belgian beer garden only a couple of hours ago. So, by the way, we need your country footy stories. Keep your eyes open over the weekend. Love to hear some of those yarns from the regions. Socials at Shelter FootyCast, FootyCast at shelterbrewing.com.au. And, of course, YouTube BackChat, Shelter FootyCast playlist, links into the bio as well. So all our socials covered there. Have to say, with Scully overseas, Bowie, nice work.
Thank you very much, Skeet. Listen to Southern River Band, drink some shelters, and listen to us and watch us.
Catch you Monday.